This is Charlie Hall with Polygon, and I'm joined today by Al Bickam, Development Communications Manager, and Sam Millen, Lead Development Manager from Creative Assembly. And we are here to talk about Total War Warhammer 2. How you doing, fellas?
Yeah, really good, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
This is a big announcement for the Warhammer community because you are revealing for the first time that the Skaven are part of Total War Warhammer 2. Why are the Skaven so close to the hearts of the Warhammer community?
Well, it's got a lot to do with their character, I think, because they're very they've got this whole kind of snickety style with their kind of twitchy whiskers. They're very backstabby. They're schemers. They're plotters. In character terms, they're fascinating. But they do something else that none of the other races in the Warhammer world really do, which is they blend this sort of amazing, crazy, mad science based on warpstone, which is that powers all their crazy weapons. So they've got this kind of mad science blended with, I suppose you could call it, sort of ethics-free medical enhancements, where they sort of, twist and mutate themselves to create these sort of horrific battlefield monsters. So they're packed with character. They've got all this really just cool tech going on, and I think that makes them a really kind of compelling and enduring race in the tabletop game.
They're just so unique compared to many of the other races in the Warhammer world. There really is nothing else quite in the Warhammer universe like the Skaven. I think that appeals to a lot of people on the tabletop, and it's been really great fun bringing them to life in the game.
What is the warpstone, and why is it so necessary for them as they go out into the world?
Well, warpstone is it's essentially a kind of power source, which rained down from the heavens sort of many millennia ago, and they feverishly gather the stuff because as I said, it sort of powers their sort of arcane inventions, but it's also their way of powering the artifacts that they use to in Warhammer 2 specifically to gain control of the Great Vortex, which is, of course, the narrative heart of Total War Warhammer 2, and we've built this narrative into the game systemically, so there's a kind of high level, rising tension throughout the game that leads to a kind of very discreet and very sort of cataclysmic end game, which we've never really sort of tackled in a Total War game before. But so that is fundamental to the Skaven's kind of domination of the Vortex. They need warpstone to power their rituals and their artifacts.
And we'll see one of those rituals kind of pop off later in the video, but I wanted to talk also about kind of the way that Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 combine together. Those that own both games will be able to play as the Skaven over this grand overworld. Tell me more about that real quick.
Yeah, so that's been one of the greater objectives of the Warhammer trilogy that we've had kind of planned out right from the start. When we were first looking at this series of games we wanted to do, all the content that exists within the fantasy world, we thought, okay, how can we make this and do each of these factions, which are incredibly unique, incredibly detailed, justice? And the way we've gone about doing this, set out to do, is to create these three games that each in their own right is a fantastic game that builds upon one another, but then also combines. So you've got 1 and 2 combining together, and the two landmasses that exist within the games, with the new Vortex part of the world in Warhammer 2, which is basically to the west of the old world from Warhammer 1. When players get to play that combined map, which is going to come out for free for people that own both games shortly after launch, it's just going to be gigantic, and you get to fulfill that original dream, that desire to have the Skaven going up against the Empire, against the dwarfs. You can get the greenskins going over and invading Nagaroth and fighting against the Dark Elves. It's really that ultimate dream that we had when we first looked at what do we want to make in a Total War Warhammer game.
All of it.
All of it.
And of course, that dream is going to be culminated eventually with Warhammer 3. All three games will combine together. But what we're watching here is the beginning of the campaign for the Skaven in Warhammer 2. So tell me about their objectives and what they're trying to accomplish here in the early game.
Yeah, so as Al explained before, the ultimate objective of the Warhammer 2 campaign is, you see the bar along the top there. That's your Warpstone ritual currency meter, and the 5 circles you've got to go along there. Those are the 5 rituals that you need to enact along the way upon trying to take the vortex, which is this big swirling maelstrom of magic in the middle of Ulthuan, the High Elves world. You're trying to get that vortex for your own misdeeds, for your own nefarious reasons. And the way to do that is to collect this Warpstone, to power these rituals, to do that before the other races who are also racing to do this again for good or for bad. That's your ultimate objective. So the way to get that Warpstone is through various different ways on the campaign map, through completing objectives, through capturing strategic locations, through completing quests. So you're basically just trying to collect this currency as quickly as you can, trying to stop the other factions from being able to collect it, and all the actions that you do upon the campaign map are really focused towards that ultimate objective. So early game, what you really want to be doing, and what Al's doing here in the gameplay, is trying to establish more of a stronghold of a base, to build up an economy, to build up bigger armies, to ultimately tech up and become stronger so that you can complete that ultimate objective.
Now, this is one of the first battles that we're looking at here. I've played a little bit as the Lizardmen at a pre-E3 Judges Week event. This is the first time that I'm actually seeing the Skaven in motion. Guys, there's an awful lot of rats on the table right now. This is a big army.
Well, this is how they work, you see, and especially earlier in the game. When, of course, like any faction that you play, any race that you play as, earlier in the game you've got access to the kind of basic units, right? And you need to build up your infrastructure and research technologies to gain access to the kind of high level ones. But especially early in the game, the Skaven are very much about swamping with numbers. So you see, like, the guys who've just poured out of the ground here, that's one of your special abilities. You can call up a unit of clan rats from underground to go and swamp the enemy, and that's really handy, for example, for stopping archers from firing at this early stage of the battle. So,
boy, howdy is it. You just came right up in front of them and engaged them. And of course, the elves are this fantastic martial force. They're not about to break, but they're completely engaged and can't fire missiles. And here come the rest of your heavy forces in.
Exactly, yeah, and your basic units, Skaven, Save, and Clan Rats, they have actually, you can probably just see it in the side panel there, but their only real trait is meat shields. Basically, you're not supposed to care about them. You just throw them in, engage the enemy, and then you can get your kind of special units like your warp fire throwers here, or the rat ogres, which cause fear and do tremendous kind of AoE damage and all this stuff. It's good to pin the enemy in place with your trash rats, essentially, and then throw in your good stuff strategically around that kind of mosh pit.
Yeah, the Skaven are just really all about numbers. In the lore, they're hidden underneath the world in great caverns and cities that they build out for themselves. Hence why you can call them up from the ground with your Menace Below ability. But there's just so many of them. But these weaker units, like the Skaven Slaves and the Clan Rats, they're not going to do great damage on their own. They're all about overwhelming numbers and really just swamping the enemy. So, like Al says, you can get those specialist units in and deal the real damage.
And they're highly mobile, too. Not just the coming up from underground, but their larger units seem to be very fast. Look at them here cutting off the retreating elf spearmen here.
Yeah, the rat ogres are very fast in particular, and actually all Skaven units have a trait where they speed up when they're routing, don't they?
Yes, scurry away, which mimics a similar ability on the tabletop, which is that when the Skaven rout, when they get low on morale and they decide to run away, which happens quite often, the rats are not the bravest of folk. They actually do so faster than any of the other units in the game, which really gives you that ability of that sweeping in, crushing the enemy, surrounding them, but quite quickly getting scared, running away, but doing so without taking too many casualties and coming back again. That's really what the Skaven are all about.
Now we're here at the end of the battle, and you've got a decision to make. You can either sell off, enslave, or eat your captives. Tell me about all three different decisions.
Sure. So, like you say, you've got three different choices to make with what you're going to do with the captives from the battle, the leftovers, and each one will give you a different benefit. So maybe you're hungering for selling them off to get some extra gold. Maybe you want to eat them to strengthen your troops so you can continue fighting, or maybe you
can enslave them for food as well, and food is an absolute. We just hovered over it briefly at the bar at the top there. Food is a unique resource to the Skaven.
Yes.
Because they're ravenous little eaters with incredibly high metabolisms. They don't really store energy. They need to keep eating all the time, and so they need to have a constant food intake. So we chose to make food a sort of key resource for them. And winning battles and enslaving people to stick in the larder for later, essentially, or sacking settlements, for example, these things give you food. And there are great benefits. There are great campaign benefits to having a higher food stocks for your faction. So you get better leadership, you get better public order across your factions, better growth. Yeah, so your cities can grow faster. But if you get into negative food, that you leave it there for too long, and it can be crippling to your campaign because everything starts grinding to a halt. So it's something you really, as a player, you really need to keep an eye on.
But the Skaven are really about growing quickly, growing hugely in number. So if you have an excess of food, you can actually use that when occupying a new settlement that you've managed to capture. You can spend that food on upgrading that settlement much quicker than you would be able to otherwise. So you can take a settlement and grow really quickly, really rapidly, expand if you've got the food to support the number of Skaven to do so.
I play a fair bit of tabletop stuff myself, way into the board games and the miniatures games as well. And the thing that I love more than anything is just seeing a table filled with good terrain. And I was really impressed in the last map with that little butte that was right in the middle of the battle. Here we've got this gorgeous elven city and these fields in the main area that we're doing battle over. Tell me more about the terrain and some of your design goals with making that for this game.
Yeah, so obviously the essence of what we really want to capture when looking at anything terrain-wise is just the variance in the biomes that you're going to find between these different races. So this is, like you said, this is a high elf, what we call a minor settlement, which is a small unwalled city, so quite vulnerable, quite open to attack, as opposed to a walled city, which you'll find elsewhere in the campaign map, which are also equally spectacular. But it's really about getting that variance that you feel like when you're in the campaign map and you're fighting in a new part of the world and you go in and you fight a battle there, that you are there, you are in the horrible, bleak world of Nagaroth, surrounded by attrition and snow or harsh deserts, or you're in the beautiful landscapes of Ulthuan, which are very pleasing to the eye, or you're in the arid deserts of the Southlands. We really want you to just feel that you're in that location. We want you to feel the scale of this world. We want it to feel inhabited and alive, and these minor settlements that we've done here, we really think are a great way of seeing these armies defending their homeland. It's not very well defended really, with no wall. They've not built up the establishment to be able to do so here. So the Skaven are probably going to quite quickly overrun them. But at least it looks beautiful while they do so.
Any unique environments that will come with the introduction of the Skaven faction?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, Skaven live underground. So Skaven have their own unique underground settlements, which look fantastic. Really moody lighting underground, machinery, warpstone. They mostly occupy the Southlands and Lustria landscape, so that they fight a lot within the Lizamen's territory. But if you're going to fight against the Skaven, if you're going to go and take the battle to them, you're going to have to go down into the depths and battle them down there.
It seems to me, at least in the early game here, that missions, these battles, pop off very, very quickly. This one really only like 5, 6, 7 minutes long. What's kind of the mean average for the length of a battle, and then what's the spread like? How long, how big will they get?
It'll vary considerably based on the number of troops that you're really bringing. In these kind of battles, you're only bringing, how many have you got there? Around 10 units, 8 or 9. So you're going to see much quicker battles with earlier troops that die easier, that run away a lot easier, and just with fewer men to bring to the battle. So kind of as your game progresses, you get stronger units, you get bigger armies, you get multiple armies fighting at once. You're really going to see those battles extend in time. Equally, if you're fighting a siege battle or if you're fighting a choke point battle, the ways in which that battle will play out will change, meaning that the length of time of the battle will change considerably. So, yeah, in some cases in these kind of battles, you can get quite a quick finish, but battles can go upwards of somewhere between 10-20 minutes, kind of at max, with a much more drawn out battle.
Now, you've also got the auto-resolve feature, which I saw you making liberal use of before. Tell me some more about how that plays out.
Sure. So auto-resolve is just the ability to say, I don't quite want to fight this battle out in the battle. I want to resolve it on the campaign, so I can keep playing through my campaign gameplay. There's several reasons why you may want to do that. Part of the strategic play of the campaign map is trying to maneuver so that you have a stronger force than your enemy. And that can often result in you being able to take a much stronger army against a much weaker army. Fighting out that battle may not be quite so fun as a more even matchup. So we give players the opportunity to say, yeah, I'm just going to auto-resolve this one because this is an easy one, and save up for when the big battles occur that you really want to fight, or when you're actually potentially likely to lose in the auto-resolve. The enemy's bringing a bigger force than you, and you want to see if you can actually turn it around in your favor with some good battle strategies. So really it's about allowing a good flow of the campaign, the ability for players to not get too hung up on having to fight 20 units versus 3 units that are in a small garrison of a city.
So tell me more about what's going on here on the strategic map right now.
So at the moment, our Skaven forces, led by Queek Headtaker, who's one of the legendary lords, the 2 playable legendary lords of the Skaven. So they're essentially, what we're doing is consolidating our starting position. So we've wiped out that kind of tutorial army, if you like, the very small elven forces that were there, and this gets us the first steps to expanding into this part of the world. We're on the southeastern continent of the New World map in Warhammer II, which is called the Southlands. So this is the starting position for the Skaven there. You see this, you'll see this points of interest like this spawning around the map, like popping up from time to time. So there's a little island has appeared, so we can send our forces over to go and explore them, and we may get some benefits from that, or bad things are sometimes waiting in the ruins. So sometimes you can get some negatives to that. So we get a little dilemma here, so it pops up and it tells us the bonus that we get. So we get some extra combat buffs because we've made a certain choice on that, and you'll see ruins sort of all around the campaign map as well. Which you can also delve those for treasure, as well as being able to settle them and create new settlements there. And actually, on the point of ruins, that's kind of one of the key features of the Skaven, and one of the backbones to how they really play in the campaign game is that when you settle the ruins, or you capture somebody else's settlement and you sort of convert it to a Skaven settlement, the other factions around you and the other races and factions around you, they'll continue to see them as ruins. So they won't be able to immediately just go and attack them. They won't even know particularly that you're there. And this all plays into the Skaven sort of backstory, that they build these hidden, vast under-empires, because you'll have a settlement and you can spend turns and turns building it up and making it higher level and building new kind of recruitment buildings there. So to all intents and purposes, you could have a full-size city with a full 20-unit garrison and a full 20-unit army tucked away in it, and the enemy might not even know it's there until they send a hero up to kind of scout the area, or they send an army in to sort of delve it for treasure, and then suddenly they're faced with a full-size city and 40 combat units ready to pounce on them. So at which point they all pour out of the ground, and combat is joined. So stealth and subterfuge in a way are sort of a key part of their character and key part of the gameplay mechanics.
That's fantastic. I also saw you making good use of the diplomacy systems there for a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about how diplomacy works with regard to the Skaven. How do you reason with a rat? How do you make friends with them?
Difficultly. Generally, Skaven are not the best when it comes to diplomacy. They can make some good deals with other Skaven, who would be willing to trade with them or to potentially ally with them. But equally, they can be quite backstab heavy. But making deals with non-Skaven, with the other races, definitely does not come easy. However, if a faction really gets itself into trouble, gets pretty desperate, at a push you might be able to make something happen with them. But generally, the Skaven are quite an insular race and will keep to themselves.
Now, you mentioned it just a little bit there, but tell me more about the difference between heroes and lords. I know that each faction, I believe, has two lords that they can recruit, but how does that differ between heroes?
Yeah, so there is 2 legendary lords for each faction. For the Skaven, it's Queek Headtaker and Lord Skrulk. There are additional lords, which we would call kind of more generic lords. You can get some Skaven warlords and some more spellcastery lords. Now, lords are the leaders of your armies. Every army has to have a lord leading that army. Heroes, however, are not bound by armies. Heroes are individuals that can go and perform actions both on the campaign map and in battle. So you can get some plague priests, for instance, who you might send around the campaign map to perform actions against enemy factions. Maybe they're going to try and assassinate an enemy lord. Maybe they're going to try and steal technology from an enemy. They're going to perform various things on the campaign map, and they're going to level up as they do so and unlock new skills. Or you can choose to embed that hero into an army and actually have them come into the battle with you, with your army, and cast magic or just go straight toe-to-toe fighting against the enemy. So with heroes, you've got quite a lot of flexibility in terms of what you want to do with them, what choices you want to make. Lords are the leaders of your army, but equally the most powerful individual units that you will possibly get.
And we're also taking a look at the tech tree here. What are the different options that you've got for exploring the tech tree? Which directions does it go in for the Skaven?
So the Skaven tech tree is quite like the Skaven, very chaotic.
It's like a rat's maze.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of trying to show the chaotic, unorganized nature of the Skaven, where there's multiple leading pathways, and you need to build certain buildings to be able to get down certain paths to unlock various different technologies. There's plenty of stuff that will help you out on either the campaign map or in the battle, but really it's very Skaven. It's very confusing in some ways, that you will have to work out exactly how to pick your way through the tree to get to the technology that you want.
Mm-hmm. And the technologies tend to, I mean, they do a whole range of stuff. There's some which increase the speed of all your units in battle, some which increase the movement range of your armies. There's a particular chain right at the kind of top right towards the end of that part of that wiggly part of the tree up there that gives your monsters, such as Hell Pit Abominations. They're some of the sort of top tier monsters that the Skaven can mutate into being. So they give them much better combat buffs, and it's sort of higher ranks when you first recruit them and things like that.
Another interesting thing here are the different stances that your lords can take as they move around with their armies. So tell me what you're doing here with Headtaker, Queek Headtaker, and the different stances as he moves around.
So I think we just put Queek into Stalking Stance there, which is one of the unique stances for the Skaven. Now, Stalking Stance enables you to actively ambush an enemy. Previously, with ambush, you have to stay still and hide and lie in wait. But the Skaven, being the sneaky rat men that they are able to actually very quickly pounce upon an enemy, surprise them, and ambush them. So it means that you can actively get yourself into a situation that's favourable for you, so that you can ambush. And what ambush means is, in the battle, you will be able to spawn effectively your units on all the way around the enemy. So rather than deploying on one side each, you will deploy all around the enemy and immediately be able to swarm them, which plays so much into the Skaven's favour, as we've explained before. There's many other stances that you can go into as well. You can go into Forced March, which will get you a little bit of extra movement across the map. You can go into Raiding, which will raid and pillage an enemy's region if you're standing there, giving you some more income as well as some more food.
So that's kind of, which is a really, really handy way for, Skaven to keep their food reserves up. So, you put a bunch of your armies into raiding mode, and it can really make a difference to your food income.
I also see a lot of ships flying around. Are ships sort of abstracted, or do I need to build a ship to get my army onto the sea? Tell me how that works.
So yeah, you just move you move an army onto the sea, and it'll, it's a given. It picks up a ship at the coastline. There's certain points at which there's sort of lowered sort of beach areas and settlements, sort of coastal settlements, are the points at which you can sort of enter or leave the sea regions. And we don't simulate full battles in a naval fashion as we do on land, which was a decision we made sort of fairly early on. We thought, Warhammer's really almost exclusively about land battles, and that was where we wanted to focus the tactical play of the battle side of the game.
We want you to focus on getting across the sea to engage in those massive land battles. And that's what those encounters at sea that we looked at before really help you do. They buff you as you're going across the sea to get you over the sea, because actually the sea is a very treacherous place. There's storms to watch out for, there's maelstroms, there's coastal reefs that can wreck your ship, so it can actually be a very dangerous place to try and cross the sea. So we wanted to give players something to incentivize them to actually make that crossing into new continents, explore new places and fight new armies, and having these small kind of like breadcrumb trail encounters that can buff you and give you things that make your army stronger by the time it actually reaches the new continent. We thought it was a really nice way to encourage players to go across.
Now, the elves are about to make landfall here, and they're going to do so a little bit north of our settlement at Dawn's Light. But another thing that's going to happen is we're going to get a bit of a narrative mission bit about the Caverns of Sotek. So tell me what's going on with that narrative mission that pops up here shortly.
So the Caverns of Sotek are is a settlement which is rich in ritual currency, and you can see that when we'll fly over there in a minute to have a look at it. But you'll see a little vortex symbol, a little swirly vortex symbol on the Caverns of Sotek to mark it as such, and you'll find these dotted around the map. And what these do is, once you capture them, I mean, you can gain your ritual currency, which is slightly different for every race. For us, it's obviously Warpstone. You can gain that through a number of different actions that you do in the game, but there are settlements such as these which are super rich in the stuff, and you can essentially mine it. Once you capture it and it comes under your control, and you develop the building chain that enables you to mine that particular resource, then you start getting a steady income of the ritual currency, which enables you to get up and do your rituals, the actual full-on rituals, much quicker, and hopefully get ahead of the other races.
I'm looking as we fly over some of those little delicate bridges and waterfalls up there. Can you bring armies up into that part of the map in the mountains, or is that just for heroes only up there?
The mountains to the east, I don't think you can get any armies. There's certain passageways that you can get through, but you can't get up onto the mountains. So you gotta think about, if you're gonna get round there to attack those settlements, what's the best way? You're gonna have to trespass through enemy land to get there. Can you actually tunnel underneath the ground? The Skaven have the ability to tunnel underneath mountains. So possibly actually that's a good way for you to get around to where you want to be.
I've played that bit of the map a few times, and there is one bit where that mountain range is just skinny enough to enable you to tunnel. You've got just enough movement range with your tunneling ability to get from one point to another. So, but there's only one point along there you can do it. So, and it's it's exploration of the map that gives you these these sort of bonuses. You're like, oh yes, I can get through there. That's a shortcut to enemy territory.
So this pesky high elf army here has started raiding your territory. So that's actually gonna hurt you. It's gonna take away from your economy. It's gonna hurt your public order. So you're gonna want to try and kill off that army as quickly as you can.
We've got some of the other factions taking over the Golden Tower here, but we've got to answer this elf army, and they strike the first blow. That did not go well.
Yeah, we chose to run away from that one, but he had enough movement to catch us up, and we can't. You can only run away from a battle twice, so that was a given.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Al elected to settle that one on the campaign map rather than see his death on the battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. That was my emergency second army here, and which has done a tiny bit of damage. Hopefully, Queek can pick up where that left off. So,
now, are all those armies lost? Are they routed and show up at another settlement at some point?
They are dust and bones. Well, I was going to say certain lords can get wounded, and they can come back at a later date. They can rehire them when they've recovered from their wounds.
Yeah,
all the troops are lost.
You can also unlock that as a skill for your lords now, so you can make them immortal if they get to the highest. I think you need to get level 20 to be able to unlock that skill. But just to talk quickly about that rights panel that appeared briefly there. So rights are effectively campaign level spells. They are incredibly powerful abilities that you can pay for on the campaign map, and they enable you to do various things. Each of the factions has 4 different ones that they can do. So for the Skaven, you've got a few simple ones that will give you bonus in various ways. I think there's one that just gives you a boost to your economy for a short while, and along with various other things. There's one that empowers your heroes in various ways and gives you a army ability called Clanstone, I believe it's called, that you can call into battle if you take that in. But the other 2 that are really interesting are the Doom Warlock ability and the Plague Warlock ability, which spawns, if you cast these spells on the campaign map, they spawn for you effectively a one-time use hero that creates devastating abilities on the campaign map. So the Doom Warlock you can send into a enemy settlement effectively as a kind of suicide bomber of sorts. He'll blow up the settlement and downgrade all its buildings, damage all its buildings to try and breach the walls as well, so that you can then go in with your army and just walk in through the walls. Or you can use the Plague Priest to actually cause a plague on the map. You can spread plague through an enemy settlement that will cause damage to the garrison and also have a chance of spreading to any nearby armies. So you can actually end up with going and spreading this plague into a high elf settlement, having lots of high elf armies catch the plague, spread it across all of their landscape to other armies. So everyone's got the flu for a little while and isn't doing so well. But it's great when you see that come off and it's getting spread around.
Love it. Those catapults that we just saw go off are just another devastating example of the Skaven tech. And then you had some more the meat shield dig up right in the middle of their formation. And it looks like you're scooting some of those giant rats around the flank here and hiding their numbers in the trees. Just so many different tactical options here that you've got on this map. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. That big line of trees to the right is very handy. So it's a nice place to put your fire throwers, your warp fire throwers, or these guys here, the rat ogres, which are kind of, Skaven don't really have cavalry as such, so having some fast moving monster units like that is a real boon because you can effectively use them as cavalry. And these guys cause fear as well. If you swing them around the back and exploiting the battle system that we do have, if something's pinned because it's already in combat and you hit it in the rear, it's going to suffer some morale shock anyway. But if you hit it with a unit that causes fear, then it's going to suffer a greater morale shock, and its morale will drop, and eventually it's going to rout quicker than it normally would do. So rat ogres are great for sneaking around the back and just doing those shock attacks.
But these high elves really trying to use their missiles. They've got, I think, the longest range of any missile unit in the game, missile infantry. So they're really trying to use that to kill lots of your storm vermin here, and being quite effective at it. But
They're whittling them down really quick.
this is where you're starting to get near to them, and once the Skaven get in, they're very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. Tenacious.
You're
little things.
you're doing an excellent job of keeping your battle lines straight. I imagine that's very important when you're fighting against a martial force like the elves here, so that you want to swarm. That's the impulse, but you need to kind of maintain some order there, or else they're going to get the upper hand.
Yeah, totally. And it does. Things get messy. Things get pushed out of line. But it helps all units to be in to have their flanks covered. You know, they are more confident as units when they've got their flanks covered, when they're protected all around, when they're in amongst their buddies, basically. So
Yeah.
it is good idea to try and keep things ordered.
Yeah, the High Elves have what's called martial prowess, which gives them really strong charge defense. They're great at standing, proud in line and really holding the front, and any force that comes running at them, they'll do a great job at holding off. But if you manage to get them split up so you can run into the back of them, so they don't know what's going on, then that's when you're really gonna cause damage to them.
Actually, the Dark Elves have the dark version of that skill,
Murderous
don't they?
prowess,
Murderous
yeah.
prowess, yeah. So when the Dark Elves go into combat, they have a sort of bar, a meter. Let's call it a murder meter. The more units you kill, the murder meter fills up. And when it hits its kind of top, when you fill up the murder meter, they get super murdery, and they move faster, they attack harder, they get a bit less defensive, I think, as well. Do they?
Yeah. What's interesting about that meter as well is that it's what they're sacrificing to sacrificing blood to their god Cain, and all they really care about is that blood is spilt. So if it's their own blood, if they're dying a lot as well,
that's kind of okay.
Equally, that's okay. Blood is being spilt, blood is being sacrificed, and so you're still going to be filling up that meter equally if you're dying as well.
Now you're chasing down the elf leader. My goodness, how
I'm just
grim.
I'm basically gloating here. I'm like loads of tiny rats chasing a legendary lord.
Now we did defeat that elf lord in battle, but we didn't destroy him in detail. And now you've actually chased him towards your settlement, guys. That's not the best idea.
Well, Skaven aren't the most intelligent of creatures, are they? No. So we're just emulating them. Be the rat. That's our motto. Be the rat.
And as the elves approach your settlement, they're going to need to fight you underground. And I don't think that you guys are quite ready to show those underground battles yet. But tell me a little bit more about what the heroes can expect to find under there.
A crazy Skaven settlement, basically a warp stone ridden, shackled, underground ruinous settlement that looks absolutely superb.
You can actually see sort of sparking chunks of warpstone sort of powering bits of the city, and they really do look the part.
So that completes the 4 races that are coming with Warhammer 2 then, doesn't it? What are the all 4 of them again, if you can remind me?
So we've got the High Elves, the Dark Elves, Lizardmen, and Skaven.
And you'll be able to play as any of them in the Warhammer 2 campaign or in the larger combined campaign map if you own Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. This is really interesting. I love watching your game in motion. It is just one of the more gruesome and beautiful experiences in gaming, and I just love it. I love watching it as much as playing it. So when can folks buy this and download it and play it for themselves? Do we have a release date yet?
Yes, it's September 28th this year, and pre-orders are available. We've got a pre-order bonus which actually gives you a new faction for Warhammer 1. We're trying something a bit different this time around, so that's totally free for Warhammer 1 players.
Nice.
I think you can get access to that well before launch. I think that's 10th of August, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah.
In fact, it's in the past, because it's now the 17th of August, right?
That's right. We recorded this a little bit before.
Thereabouts. Yeah.
What's that extra faction that folks should have access to for Warhammer 1 right now?
They're called Norska, so essentially Norska, the the kind of northern tribesman from the snowy hinterlands at the top of the right next to the Chaos Wastes, right at the top of the old world. Chaos infected, in fact, yeah. And they are characterised by the ridiculous amount of monsters they take into battle: giant war mammoths and things called Fimir and ice trolls, and things called skin wolves, which are nasty, sort of feral things that walk upright like a man, but that's where the similarity really ends.
Fimir, I haven't played with a Fimir since my youth and Hero Quest. I'm very excited now suddenly.
Yeah, well, they're back. Who knew? You know,
that's
so
great.
it's nice. That's one of the joys of working with the Warhammer license, is being able to, you know, go back and say, hang on, these things they might, you know, these are part of the canon. Why shall we do this? And you know, we've got a great relationship with Games Workshop, and most of the time they're like, yeah, hell yeah, go for it.
That's great.
So it's great.
Well, Al and Sam, thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlie.